This is Charleston's retirement coach, Brandon Bowen.
It's been a long winter for a lot of folks, and it's been a bit of a wild start to spring because even here in Charleston, it was warm, and then that cold front that came across the entire country and just did another cold snap on so many people.
We had the fake spring. The fake spring, I call it every time, because you get it and you're like, yes, I'm like, but just don't
hang
trust
on.
it.
Don't put your sweaters away.
and then you're so mad when you got to break that stuff back out.
I know.
But at least we're not up north. We were just talking about before the show, like they're having blizzards still, right?
Forget about it.
No wonder they moved down here. You guys, listening that have moved down here, you are smart. And you said, you know what? When I can finally pick where I want to live, I'm out of here. We're going to Charleston.
Well, something that is trending on our social feeds due to this long winter, it's the idea of wanting to get ready for spring and the warm weather to come, spring cleaning, house burping. Have you heard about this trend? You listening to us on the radio right now, you might have just said, what did she just say? I said house burping. It's suddenly trending, and this is Michigan housekeeper Denise Juarez explaining what house burping is.
Burping your house is simply opening windows and doors no matter the season. There are a ton of benefits to this, especially if you've had sickness in the house. It improves air quality, better sleep and mood, gets rid of the sticky germs, and it can reduce humidity and prevent mold. Most people do 15 to 20 minutes. I actually do an hour because I feel like it's just so refreshing.
I do love it when the weather starts getting nice and I fling open all the windows.
Yes. Well, you can tell she's from Michigan. She's not from here with all this pollen that we have right now.
That's right. I was about to say, until the pollen shows up and then all the windows get shut real fast.
Yes. You do that. Or the humidity in the summer. She said she did it every season. Did you hear that? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just such a tightwad. If I'm running my heat and it's cold outside, I'm not going to open and let all this cold air in. And conversely, in the summertime,
spoken like a true financial advisor. That's very expensive, this habit.
Yeah. You're just fighting to try to keep the air down. In our hot summers, that's the sticky point, literally, here in Charleston is the heat and the humidity. So I'm not going to open my doors and windows in the July and August and September. So, but, I guess I get what she's saying, to kind of let the fresh air in, right?
That's it. Let the fresh air in, let the fresh air wash over your home and bring in some good, fresh perspective.
Yes.
The same could be said for our money, Brandon, because, again, just blowing some fresh air through the plant. Or in the case where somebody comes to you, we talk all the time about if maybe you're working with somebody and you've got questions that are not getting answered or you want a second opinion, right? A fresh set of eyes on the plan to maybe poke holes and show you some areas where you could improve. So let's say somebody wanted to come to you for a review process. Somebody wanted to do a portfolio burp, for example. What areas do you look at first, and what problems can these checks help to prevent?
Okay, I would say the retirement accounts, those biggest ones, the biggest accounts there. And this is so important. If you're within 5 years of retirement, okay, I would say very, very important. And if you've already retired, okay, then it's even more important just because, now like a mistake, and that's what we're trying to prevent against is mistakes, right?
Yep.
If something were to happen with the market and affect your portfolio, I mean, that is a mistake. And if you're already retired, I mean, you can't go back to work. You can't keep working longer, right? So there's some things that we can't recover from, or it's super, super hard to recover from. So it's just wise to get this, an X-ray is what we could call it. I don't like the burp.
Okay. Right.
But let's call it a portfolio X-ray.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had a gentleman, he listens to the show a good bit and finally picked up the phone because I do talk about these, portfolio X-rays quite often. And so he came in, this was probably 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And he was like, Brandon, I hear you talking about that. I want to go ahead and get this X-ray. And he brought in his statements and he had saved, when we swept it all together, about $1.7 million. So he had done a great job, single guy, actually just got remarried, got married.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks ago. So
it's exciting. Congratulations.
Yes, congrats to him. And so So ladies, he's off,
Sorry, ladies.
He's off the market there with his 1.7. I'm not saying women are gold diggers. Is that what that sounded like?
No, I think that it's like for me as a woman who I've worked very hard. I have my own savings.
Yes.
I want to meet somebody at the table. If it were, listen, I'm happily married, but if I were to get to the point where at a certain age, a certain level of success, I would want to know that I was meeting somebody that had their own success and savings.
That's right.
Yep.
I was in the same boat with, 2 years ago with mine after my divorce. And, and so, so I get that.
Yep. And your wife, Amy, has her own business and it's the same thing.
Yeah. She's killing it. And so I'm super lucky.
Yeah.
But, my client, he came in and he's like, I want to get this x-ray here. And he, like you listening, you probably know that, hey, I think I'm doing well in some areas, but I kind of already know, where I'm struggling.
Okay.
What's probably going to be bad, kind of deal. And so he came in, and I don't know if he thought I was going to be like Simon Cowell, like this is rubbish. This is awful, But when I showed him the report, our Morningstar report, it wasn't all bad. And so I was like, hey, put your defenses down. I mean, it's you're doing some good things. So let's walk through it. So here's what we would focus in on, Heather.
Okay.
Back to your earlier question.
Yeah.
Is the first thing is I want to look at how risky are you right now?
Okay.
How much risk are you walking around with?
Yep.
I like to say. And a lot of people might think that they're a 60-40, just a little bit more aggressive than they are defensive, something very balanced. And a lot of times it is very, very eye-opening for them to see that they're like an 80-20, maybe even 90-10 aggressive.
And they don't realize.
They don't realize it.
Wow.
Maybe they were 60-40 last time they took a look at things and burped the portfolio, but with the markets going on a run over the last 10 years to 15 years, really. I mean, there's been some scary moments, but then it has probably drifted and gotten out of balance. Okay. So we want to look at how aggressive your portfolio is. And now is a great time to sell high and start rebalancing and bring things back in line, especially, again, if you're right before retirement or already retired.
Okay.
So for him, he was very aggressive. He knew it. Okay. And he knew that. The next thing we look at is the cost of your investments.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is very, very important. This is super hard for most everyone to understand. What do you mean the cost of, I'm paying my advisor's fee. I'm like, yes, I know, but what about the cost of the investments? Like, what do you mean? And so that I'm referring to expense ratios.
Okay.
So expense ratios, if you're in mutual funds, those usually have pretty high, relatively high expense ratios of maybe 0.5%, maybe up to a 1%.
And aren't mutual funds more common in 401k plans?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's where I think also it gets confusing because people don't realize. They're like, well, I'm just invested in this fund. It's like, yes, a lot of 401k plans are heavier in mutual funds, and mutual funds tend to have higher fees.
Yes.
Okay.
And also if the financial advisor you're working with, if they're captive, a lot of times they can only pick from the funds that are on their shelves. Okay. And their big company, their big name brand company limits them on what they can choose for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And it might be these certain ones, and they are just terribly expensive. Okay. And I'm like, why are you in that one? This like, S&P 500 mutual fund. I'm like, okay, well, let me just pull up a chart here and show you over the past 10 years. And your jaw would hit the floor when you look at the delta between your costly mutual fund and a very low cost ETF.
The delta? You're throwing out some fancy terms.
Sorry. The distance between the spread between, over 10 years, gosh, it could be the difference of 50% return. Okay. Yeah. So, but for my client here, this was the great news is he was in very low cost, Vanguard, iShares, Spider, ETFs, right? So those costs was only like 0.04%. Yep. Okay. Like minuscule.
Good.
Okay. So that was really good. I said, hey, great job with that. And he goes, thanks. I try to watch this. I look at my costs and things. Yeah. But as soon as that came out of his mouth, I said, but you've got a variable annuity, which there's $600,000 in this variable annuity. They were charging him 4% in fees
every year.
Every year.
The 600,000. What's the quick math on that?
$24,000
a year.
Like he's trying to swim upstream, right? He's got to make 4% to not lose.
Right. Okay?
It's crazy. And then if you lose money, because variable annuities are in the stock market, right? So if it goes down, you got to add an additional 4% loss.
Right.
On that,
okay.
Right. So he was like, what? And I was showing him that. And he was like, well, I did it because I wanted some protected income. I was like, okay, I like that thought, but there's just better ways to find some protected income. So that was the worst part of his plan. Okay. Was that variable annuity. Okay. And then the third big area that we look at is do you have a lot of redundancy going on? Some crossover, correlation. Okay. You might have 12 to 15 different mutual funds or even ETFs, low-cost ETFs, but they could all be holding the same thing, the same stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you think, no, I got 15 different funds here. What do you mean? And I'm like, well, okay, my report will show us how many of your funds Apple is in, NVIDIA, right? Google. We can be able to see all of that stuff. And I'm like, it's in 8 of them. Okay. And they're like, oh gosh. And so what that means is if the tech sector has a sell-off, or if a certain sector of the market struggles, well, if all of your holdings are holding the same stuff, it's all going to move in one direction. Okay. There's nothing counterbalancing, smoothing out your ride. So if you felt like your portfolio is, just a little bit too volatile, too aggressive, a bad week in the market, and it's just like, ooh, you don't even want to check because you know what you're going to see, right? Then that means that you're just overweight in certain sectors. You don't have that diversification. So so for him, there was some good, a lot bad on there. And he's like, Brandon, I want you to fix it. How can we fix it? So we actually then met 3 different times. Okay. So he was very methodical. He wanted to understand what he was doing. Right.
Sure.
And I love it. I love working with clients that, hey, we've got to go through, a lot of engineers are this way and they need to understand what they're buying or understand what they're committing to. Okay. And so we did that. And so we cleaned up the things that needed attention in his portfolio.
Yeah.
And what he then now has and walked out of the office with is a protected income plan. Remember, he already knew he needed it. And so I said, okay, let's find that protected income plan for you, but it costs way less from what he was paying. Like I was saying, we massively reduced the cost of his investments. Okay. We reduced that drag. So think of it that way. Your portfolio could have a lot of drag, or you could be trying to swim upstream, however you want to think about it.
Yeah.
A lot of headwind with your portfolio. So we reduced that, made it much more streamlined. And so he's saving a ton of money, saving a lot of money. He's got a nice emergency fund there. And now, like I said, he just got remarried. They went on their honeymoon. They're, with all the traveling, the peace of mind, the confidence he has. He feels like, Brandon, I feel like I've lost 25 pounds.
Yeah.
So to have that diversification, that plan in place, and it all started, Heather, with our portfolio X-ray. So you listening, if you're sitting here thinking like, man, I don't know the last time someone has looked at what we've done for retirement. Maybe you've been saving a lot at work, and that's your biggest bucket is your 401k or 403b workplace plan, or maybe you've rolled it out. Maybe you've got, maybe you're listening and you've got several advisors that don't know what the other ones do. It's kind of like you've got one guy over there that, and then I've got this money that I inherited from my parents and I kept that advisor.
Yep.
And then I've got someone from back where I'm from. I couldn't break up with him or her. And it's just a mess, right? It's all over the place. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to offer to you a no obligation, no commitment fee X-ray. It's a second opinion. What we'll do is we'll have you bring in all of your statements, everything that you've done for retirement, and we will analyze that. I'll run it through our Morningstar software. Okay. And we're going to go through each of those 3 major areas that we talked about: the risk, the cost, the redundancy. And I'll show you, hey, there's some things that you're doing well. And then here's some things that you might go back to your current advisor and tell them to knock it off and fix it or whatever, or maybe you'll want us to do it, but there is no cost for this. Yeah. And I am glad to do this for the next 5 people who pick up their phone right now. We've set aside 5 appointments each week just for you listening on the radio, or if you're listening on the podcast. I want you to call or text my office right now and text the words X-ray. And Tanya's standing by right now. The number is 843-890-2400. 843-890-2400. text the words X-ray. If you've saved $500,000 or more, it's past time for you to get this no obligation X-ray on your savings and investments so you can have the plan that you have the confidence that you deserve.
Thanks for listening to Charleston's Retirement Coach Podcast with Brandon Bowen. To learn more, visit bowenwealth.com and join Brandon for his radio show, Charleston's Retirement Coach, Saturdays at 11 a.m. on 94.3 WSC.
Financial professionals are not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Brandon Bowen is licensed in your state, please call 843-203-2030. J. Brandon Bowen is an investment advisor representative of Bowen Wealth, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments can fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. J. Brandon Bowen is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Bowen Wealth, LLC, insurance licensed in South Carolina. Market Guard is a registered investment advisor with the SEC and provides model portfolios only to Impact Partnership Wealth. Market Guard makes no implied warranties or representations and is not liable for any data presented.